Well, it's the biggest card of the summer, pretty unarguably thus far. A tremendous card for Whitney Day at Saratoga. Plenty of grade ones before it. We're going to talk about the Fourstardave in our second segment. But of course, we're going to talk about the big battle between Fierceness and Sierra Leone. Mind frame listed in your past performances. Unlikely to go. White Abario, the winner 2 years back, and plenty of others to take a shot at the likely favorites in there. It'll be Bailey Armour and I breaking down the Fourstardave and the Whitney up next on Horse Sense.
Welcome back to another episode of Horse Sense, and welcome if you're new. As always, I'm your host, Bailey Armour, joined alongside peanut butter connoisseur Scott Shapiro, diving into one of the biggest weekends that we've seen in racing all season. We've got 4 grade ones on the card at Saratoga, of course, headlined by the Whitney that Scott mentioned in our cold intro here. Some of the best horses that we've seen in training and continue to be in training as they get a little bit older in their careers are coming into this field. So this is an absolute monster day of racing, and one that I personally am really excited to see a lot of these horses run. To go alongside that, we've got truly a veritable slew of promotions on the calendar this week. Of course, the big card at Saratoga is going to come with a $5,000 hit and split between the late pick 4 and late pick 5. Scott, you're doing some blogs for that? Am I right?
Already submitted right before we
Already submitted.
recorded. So we're recording Thursday around 10:30 a.m. Eastern. So yeah, most people by the time those blogs will be up by the time you see it. Great promotion. Tell them about it.
Yeah, perfect timing. So $2,500, you'll win your share if you hit the late pick 4 or the late pick 5. Hit both, you'll win your share of $5,000 total, which is a pretty good offer if you ask me. And then if there's any harness fans watching our mostly thoroughbred focus show here, it is Hambletonian week this week, and that's going to come with a bet 150 get 20 bonus on the Hambletonian card at the Meadowlands. And then rounding out the weekend, Mountaineers got their big West Virginia Derby and Oaks Day. So you're going to get a 20% win boost on your win bets at Mountaineer on Sunday. Everything that I just mentioned can be found in the promos tab of the Firstbet app or the promo section of the Xpressbet desktop website. So make sure you check those out for full list of rules and races and everything that you would want to know to answer all of your questions about those.
Yeah, and then the tournaments tab and the tournaments page on Xpressbet. We'll talk about a bunch of tournaments this weekend. Well, we've got the $500 Whitney Day Challenge. We've got the inaugural West Virginia Derby Day tournament. We've got the inaugural Manitoba Derby Day tournament. I believe both inaugurals, right?
That's
Sunday
right.
and
Yeah,
Monday.
Sunday, Monday.
So plenty of action for tournament folks to get involved with. One includes the big card. One includes the big card for someone we know that thinks the West Virginia Derby card, like Christmas.
He
So
loves it.
we wish that human a very enjoyable time, and we know people love it at Assiniboia, right, Manitoba.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
Manitoba, and then Spaces. Well, I'm back on Saturday. We keep it rolling. Travis Stone will join me. He'll be he spends the summer at Saratoga, not voicing, but announcing races is what I really mean. And instead handicapping for the most part, and working on some other things. But Travis, a very good handicapper. Looking forward to having him on 9 a.m. Eastern on Saturday morning to go through the big Whitney card. Well, as we both talked about, the clear feature of the featured card of the day is the Whitney. It's the 11th of 13 at Saratoga on Saturday. Graded stakes galore. And it actually makes up the last part of a pick 3. We won't get into that, but I think we'll talk a little bit about a double. No surprise, Bailey likes the 12th race a little bit, turf sprint. But really, we're going to obviously focus on the big race here, the Whitney. Mind frame, who's listed on the PPs, is very likely to scratch at the time of recording here. In fact, we would assume he would, unless Fierceness has to, something happens to Fierceness in this spot. But that leaves us with a good field of 9 at the moment. You've got a couple of real long shots that are likely to be prominent in the early going. Mama's Gold, Contrary Thinking. You've got some horses that are, maybe up against it a little bit, at least from the morning line perspective, that are going to be coming from off the pace to at least some extent. And then you've got the big off the pace runner, Sierra Leone, 2-1, the second choice. And you've got Fierceness at 9 to 5, and then you got White Barrio you got to figure out at 4 to 1 on the morning line. So we've talked a lot about the building of tickets, and I think this is a good segment just because there's so much to it. It's not really repetitive ever, particularly if you're learning this game, at a slightly above after beginner level, like I think a lot of the viewers probably are, not to assume all. But I think, but I do think that, this is a different race where, yeah, Fierceness is a short price. Sierra Leone is a short price relative to the field, but not like she feels pretty. And last week it was sovereignty. The week before that it was journalism. So different kind of thinking here. Even if you love Fierceness, singling Fierceness in a double or pick three does not limit you in what you're doing quite the same way those types of horses do. Same is true of Sierra Leone. I'm saying all that. I'm done throwing out the chatter here, Billy. I'm going to throw it over to you because I'm interested to hear where you're at here, because I know there's a couple of horses that you think a lot of, but I wouldn't be surprised if you're taking a little bit of a swing.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably one of the better races that we have seen to shape up on the entire calendar this year, with the exception of some of those like really interesting Derby preps that we saw. But we've got these older horses coming back. I mean, you've got two Breeders' Cup Classic winners, you've got a Travers winner. Of course, Mindframe's not going to be in it most likely at the time that we film this. We'll scratch, but a very nice horse on paper, obviously. And then you've got
In
a couple.
reality, too.
Yeah, on paper and in reality. I mean, clearly he's an incredible horse, just one that we probably will not see in this race on Saturday. But I'm gonna take a bit of a flyer here, and I have some homework to back up my strong opinion here on my long shot. 10 to 1 on the morning line. Bear with me. The number 2, Skippy Longstocking. I just need a moment to let that sink in. This
What?
is
It's
a
a 10
horse.
to 1. It's not
I
50
know.
to 1.
No, he's not 50 to 1, but like
I
it's
love the
one that would.
aggressiveness, but it's not impossible.
No, it's not
Be
impossible,
hard
and
on yourself.
I really don't think so. But for a horse that's going against some of these other ones, these Titans are just going to be such short prices. I really think that Skippy has a solid shot here. He consistently shows up no matter where he runs, pretty much. He is still looking for his first grade one win and has run in this race before, was fifth in last year's edition. But when I was looking at it all in BetMix, I mean, BetMix was just eating him up. Late pace, like lifetime earnings, class, all kinds of different speeds and figures and pace numbers and things like that, that really set him as one that I paid a little bit more attention to. And he's got Jose Ortiz, who we know has been having a very solid Saratoga, whatever Saratoga meet we're on finally now this year that we've gone up and come back down so many times. And I really think that Safi put him in here against White Barrio for a reason. And so I'm gonna take a stab with Skippy. My original ticket just within this race, which we won't rehash the horizontals versus verticals debate that we had from the other week. Cold Exacta, Skippy over Sierra Leone.
Okay, I mean that's aggressive. I like it. We're coming along here to the point where I think the way we've been talking about the tickets. We'll talk about the tickets before the handicapping. I think that's what we really want to focus on. I think most
Mm-hmm.
people know these horses. Sure, I'll give a little insight. I'll talk about it on plenty of other content. We heard Bailey's thoughts. She'll continue to maybe sprinkle them in here throughout the next few moments of the conversation. But from a betting perspective, you're throwing out the favorite. I think Fierceness is going to be the prohibitive favorite in here.
Yeah,
Sierra
for
Leone
sure.
will take plenty of money, but you take Mind Frame out. I think that with the outside draw and the fastest races, he's the one to beat. I'm not even saying otherwise, and I'm usually one that is a little leery on Fierceness. Trusting him at short prices, but it's just things are going to look good for him. I think Sierra Leone's going to be your second choice. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
else, you really are able to kind of be a little bit more wide if you want to be. Now, first thing I would tell you though, you're talking about playing exact at 2-5. You got to bet the 2 to win in that
Yeah,
situation first, right?
yeah,
But what you want to do, in my opinion, and I don't, when people are just starting out the game, it's not wise. You're almost always going to be better served with, unless horses are big prices and if you're just thinking about playing the day, if you bet the horse to win, put all your money on it to win instead of win place or win place show, I think you're better served in the long run. But I don't more risk averse people. That's not one hill I really, live and die on with newer players. Dub win in place, if that makes you feel better, that's fine. But what I would do is use the two and exact as first and second with other
Mhm.
horses. And in your case, you're against fierceness. You've got
Mhm.
Sierra Leone. It's pretty simple. All you got to do is I'd play a 5-2, and then I'd play a 2-5 for a little bit more or less, depending on how you want to weight it. But remember, if the two wins, you're cashing that win money plus the exacta will be more with the two on top. So I think you're looking at a pretty fair offering on Skippy Long stocking in this race and price wise. And I think the exacta will be very much up to your liking. And I don't even think, unless you want to make cases for using different horses for second or something, I think you can really try to hit it pretty good. And these are the kinds of races when you like a horse that's a good price and don't want to use a whole bunch of other horses, you can, let's say you want to spend $20 on the race, $50. I mean, think how many times you could have it when you're so used to the mentality is spread. When I have that kind of money, I want to spread it out. Just you're right here. It comes in 2-5, and you make a grip of money, to use an old California
Grip
term.
of money. I think that that is probably one of the lessons that took me from beginner to intermediate is if you have X amount of bankroll, whatever, and then looking at it like, oh, I have all of this bankroll, I can afford to spread out and really cover my bases on all of these ones. But then think about how many losing bets that actually is going to be in the long run versus just making even. I mean, you might still lose, but you're going to win so much more if you just take that same chunk of bankroll and
Well,
really narrow it down in on a stronger opinion at a price.
yeah, and I mean that spread thing. Maybe you don't have strong opinions in some of the pick 5 or pick 4 races. That doesn't mean you have to play. That doesn't mean you have to spread. What it means is, hey, maybe I don't have to play this.
Yeah.
Maybe I want to put my money into this. Where not only if I hit, I mean, it's just when you hit things square, you're not counting on getting, lucky to an extent.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's different. I love playing horizontals, particularly though when I think there's a couple of favorites that are vulnerable and there's a horse that I really like to key in on. That's the time I think they're the best. Otherwise, you know, you got to consider what your best options are. When I say horizontals, I don't necessarily mean doubles. And I think to that point, you wanted to talk about tying up Skippy with a horse in a double, which again, if you're doing the 12th, you can go one deep. You could easily go two deep, and be very much within the very legitimate guidelines. I mean, if their prices, it could be three. But how did you see the 12th? We won't get too in depth with that. I talked about it on my blogs.
Yeah, we'll just briefly touch on the 12th race, which of course is a turf sprint. So how can I not talk about it? I'm going from swinging from a price to a price again here with the number 2 Perfect Figure, making his first start in the Wesley Ward barn, who is 33% first time in the barn, 24% in turf sprints, 27% off of that like 40-ish day layoff. I believe his last start was like sometime in mid-June. He's been working really well at Saratoga, and he gets Frankie Dettori in to ride. So a lot of things to like here, especially at this value. So I probably won't, might add maybe one other horse to that ticket, but I would probably just go based on everything that we've been talking about over these past few segments, just stick to it cold and go Skippy over Perfect Figure.
Play a $10 double, it'll make your month, from
Yeah,
how
no kidding.
your betting perspective, you're only losing 10. I mean, in addition to what you have, I mean, just think, you're used to, there's the way you've kind of been trained. And again, this isn't, telling people not to play horizontals. It's telling people to explore other options. But you're
Mm-hmm.
so, accustomed with the group feel. I get it. The group ticket is fun, but if you're, just think a $10 2-5. You don't got, I mean, $10 two or $10 2-2,
Two,
two
two.
winners, and that's it. It's like, um, that's an interesting filly. She's one of the horses. I saw someone else. I wrote up somebody else, but that got bought recently. Oh, it's the 4 in this race, Upon a Star. They
Upon a
both,
star.
yeah, no, I like that filly just a little bit, but I think I don't think, I know they both got purchased at the Horses of All Racing sale after their last start, which both were in mid-June, and
Mm-hmm.
that sales in July. Fasig Tipton
Mm-hmm.
sales in July, so they both got bought here at Saratoga. It looks like Wesley took his to Kentucky. I don't know when that sale is exactly, but it looks like this one went back to Kentucky. Yeah, I would have had to. And the same is true of the Mike Maker Upon a Star, but just something to keep an eye. They bought the filly at the sale. I don't know if they
Mhm.
have any sort of bonus or not, but either way, coming right back to where they bought the filly from, going right to the turf. All right, we talked about the Whitney, the biggest race of the day, but I think one of the better betting races of the day, and frankly, a division that sometimes produces really good, really competitive races. Sometimes maybe a little underwhelming when you look at the grade ones, but this is a legitimate race, the Fourstardave, which I kind of remember it being on its own for the most part throughout my life. Remember it being on the Arlington Million Day in the past, which has actually moved to Colonial, of course, next week. But either way, this is a fantastic race. It kicks off the pick six on the card, grade one, and it marks the return of a big horse, and that's Johannes, who hasn't raced in New York, I don't believe, ever. 13 starts.
Mm-mm.
Came to Churchill on American to run the American turf on the Derby weekend in 2023, but really California based. And man, 8 for 13, and a little bit different, Bailey, in the sense that he was beating up on the same horses out there, to use the word, and a lot of people were kind of questioning, because a lot of times the California horses, when they go up against the rest of the world, they're overwhelmed. He made a strong account of himself in the Breeders' Cup Mile last year. More Than Looks ran him down, another American, but ran second. He's legit. He's a legitimate grade one animal. He's proven it, but he's been on the sidelines, mild bone bruising after his win in the San Gabriel. But they've been pulling in this race, they being trainer Tim Yakteen. So I thought we would use this as an opportunity to discuss kind of how we evaluate horses off layoffs. When they're bigger prices, it's a little easier to be forgiving. You look at a 5-2 favorite like this, though, and you're trying to poke holes. What do you think?
I'm so glad you asked because, and I feel, I don't know, maybe this is just a me thing. Like, I feel bad when I really, really don't like a horse, and I never, like, it's not the horse's fault that I don't like him, and it's not necessarily the people's fault. It just kind of, it is what it is. So, coming up with a way to say things that are not going to be like, you know, evil to this horse, but just coming off of this layoff for the reason that he was laid off, bone bruising. Of course, if you don't know what bone bruising is, repeated stress over time to the cannon bones of a horse can cause bruising in those forearm bones that they've got there. And basically, it just takes time to heal and recover from that. So that's why he's been off for so long after December of 2024, coming back just now. Tim Yakteen was quoted in the Blood Horse coming into this race as saying that, his training has been good. It's been uneventful, no concerns, but we'll find out if he's 100%. Clearly, they were confident enough to fly out here for the second time only ever in this horse's career, like you mentioned, after that Churchill race, and mentioned that they were just targeting one more start before the Breeders' Cup Mile back out at Del Mar, of course, which I assume would be the City of Hope Mile again at Santa Anita that he won in 2024. I don't have an X-ray vision or anything, but that's what I assume he's going to. I just don't I just don't like it. I just don't like coming off of this bone bruising layoff at a horse his age. Of course, Uncle Mo wasn't exactly the soundest horse in the world, who is his paternal grandsire. And I don't think that he'll be able to run back to the form that he was in before this bone bruising event happened. This is the second longer layoff that we've seen. Of course, he had that layoff from a 2-year-old to 3-year-old year in 2022 after he broke his maiden third time out. And so for me, especially at this price, for him never having run outside of that California jurisdiction primarily, of course, made the one start at Churchill, but the way that the California turf is versus the way that the Saratoga turf is, I think they're going to play very differently. And I just don't think that this is a horse suited to this horse. So for me, it's a toss, unfortunately, and I will be on the 8 deterministic for Miguel Calan.
Well, Johannes was a horse I was high on last year, like I said, but coming into handicapping the race, I kind of thought similar for sure. Like, this horse is going to be a shorter price, shipping cross country, off a layoff. But in reality, the fact that they're shipping him cross country kind of says a lot about what they think.
It's a
I'm
point
not
in his
buying
favor.
into. I hope that he's good. He's going to be. I think he's ready to run his race. And you referenced the race back off the layoff in the American, off the long layoff in the American turf, which was one of his best efforts ever. So
Mhm.
he's already proven, if he's training well, he can run a big race off the layoff. So let's talk. But I just want to real quick run through a couple of things that I point, kind of look at. You're a little better with knowing the mild bone bruising, how that might impact, and I'm not, with the physicality type stuff like that. I'm not going to be able to kind of make too much differentiation unless I'm using other people's thoughts like yours. But these are questions I ask. One, has the horse ever done it? That's a check, right? Two, what are the trainer's stats more specifically on in detail than, oh, what's his left? What's he off a 180-day lay or a 90 to 180-day layoff last 20 years or 5 years?
Mhm.
No, I want to dive a little bit more in. I checked in. I have him off of 100 12 for 61 off 100 plus day layoff over the last 5 years for a 285 ROI. So
Mhm.
I'm combining that stat, which it's hard to really shorten it too much.
Mhm.
It tells me that he can get a horse ready. So but I'm not gonna. I think people might be like, well, he can automatically, but I like
Sure.
to add other things to it and not just assume that because Yachtine hit with 12 of 61 instead of 9 of 61 that
Mhm.
we know that it's a big difference maker. But you look at that, all right, we already have the fact that he can do it. This horse has done it. Then we look at the workout pattern, right?
Mhm.
And based on what Yachtine said in his quotes, we know why he was off. So December 19th was his last work. He ran in the San Gabriel, has not been back on in a published work. He has not missed a beat since May 19th, though. Boom, boom, boom. So we know that
57, yeah.
he should be fit. And
Mhm.
has this been the goal? Have they been pointing to the race? We know that they have been, or they wouldn't be shipping across here. And we also
Right.
heard Yachtine say it. So as much as I wanted to play like against him as much as you, he just checks a lot of boxes. I think he's the best horse in the race. I don't think he's going to be a great bet in here, but I think he's also a very poor, or I think he also has a very good chance of running his race. I ended up picking Think Big over Johannes, to your point, and I picked Deterministic for third.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I like the most about having these kinds of conversations with you, because we do have such different perspectives from a longtime gambler's perspective and a horseman's perspective. Like, okay, we look at the same form and both kind of come to a different conclusion based off of, what we know. Like you're looking at these stats and figures and stuff, and I'm looking at it from a just kind of a horseman's angle. Not to say that one or the other is right or wrong, but hopefully it can give some extra kind of color to our viewers out there who might not know one side or the other. So I always appreciate your insight. As always, thank you so much for watching another episode of Horse Sense. I'm Bailey Armour and was joined alongside peanut butter connoisseur Scott Shapiro, talking all things Whitney Day, the Whitney and the Fourstardave on that big Saratoga card on Saturday. Make sure that you check out all of the promotions in the Firstbet and Xpressbet apps or websites, whichever you want to use, and opt into those so you can get your share of that $5,000 bonus, along with everything else that we've got going on this weekend and heading into next. Let us know in the comments who your pick is in the Whitney and the Fourstardave, and if you think that Johannes is going to romp coming off of this layoff. As always, good luck, and we'll see you next time on Horse Sense.